Taxiway Foxtrot is straight ahead of us. Follow the yellow lines, then turn right.
Hey, what's up YouTube? Balder here, and I am revisiting the old video that I made of Dovetail's flight school. I noticed that there are a few mistakes that the lessons made, and I'm going to be pointing them out. For example, they didn't really mention how we taxi, but that's a small one.
The traffic pattern is a rectangular pattern around a runway that allows aircraft to take off and land in an orderly manner. The pattern is especially important at airports without control towers. Flying the pattern also makes it easy to configure the airplane in the same way every time, and make a stable approach to land.
Well, at least that part is very true. Now here's something that I noticed right off the bat. Since we're approaching the threshold...
Go straight across here.
Since we're approaching the threshold, we are supposed to stop before the threshold. However, he doesn't tell us until it's way too late.
Stop here.
And I already went past it.
Prescott Tower, Cherokee 109er Sierra Hotel is ready to go. Holding short runway 3 right at Foxtrot, remaining in the pattern.
Cherokee 109er Sierra Hotel, Prescott Tower. Right close traffic approved. Runway 3 right at Foxtrot, intersection departure, cleared for takeoff.
Right close traffic approved, cleared for takeoff 3 right, 9er Sierra Hotel. Taxi to the right out onto the runway.
So basically we're going to taxi, and so far from what I remember, this wasn't really anything bad with the takeoff, or what he mentioned about the takeoff.
And give it full power.
So far so good. That's nothing bad. But he doesn't mention various things.
Cherokee rotates at 55 knots.
You also need to put in some right rudder, and you also need to correct for the torque of the propeller as well. There's various things that they don't really touch on this, just pointing it out.
Now pitch to climb at 75 knots, which is the best climb speed in the Cherokee. There's a slight crosswind from the left today. You'll need to turn left a few degrees to correct your wind drift and maintain the runway center line.
Yeah, if you notice, there are just these small little nitpicks that you don't really pay attention to.
That's 300 feet below the pattern altitude of 6,000 feet. Good job. Right on speed.
Another thing I forgot.
I'm impressed.
They forgot about the landing lights, the strobe lights, and the transponder.
Okay, here comes 5,700 feet. Now make a turn 90 degrees right to a heading of 120 degrees.
Now I need to take a look and see if this is correct. Right, so all the instructor said was to turn. This is important because while he said we should turn, he doesn't mention climbing up to 6,000 feet. You have to look down to the upper left to learn that. So that's something that if you were to ignore, then you'd probably fail the lesson. Also, if you notice, the arrow is not aligned.
Keep climbing to 6,000 feet.
With what your heading is supposed to be. Now, I don't know if that's because I kind of overshot it a little bit, but either way, that's still just another little
6,000 feet. Level
nitpick.
off and hold 90 knots.
He never
Once you
told
reach
me.
pattern altitude, pause for just a moment, then turn downwind. Go ahead and turn right 90 degrees now. Fly heading 210.
Again, I don't really feel like
Maintain
talking
90
over the
knots
parts
at
that are
6,000 feet.
actually correct.
Your goal is to fly a ground track parallel to the runway. Great job so far.
Why, thank you. to my
Glance
passenger.
down at the runway. It should be halfway up the wing.
Just halfway up the wing, just the tip.
Okay, downwind is a good time to do the pre-landing checks. Belts are tight, mixture is rich, fuel pump is on, landing gear is down and welded.
Bad joke, but doesn't even talk about the landing lights, but again,
Okay,
small
you're being the
details.
touchdown zone, so start descending. Pull the throttle back and lower the nose to initiate a descent. At 1 notch of flaps and the aircraft will slow to around 75 knots. Aim for a 500 foot per minute descent rate.
Alright, that's definitely
Now start looking
doable.
over your shoulder at the runway. You'll turn base when we're 45 degrees off our touchdown point.
Now this is actually the biggest problem that I've seen. He never tells me to level off. He never explains which altitude to level off, and he never brings it up. Now if I were to keep descending 500 feet per minute, I would probably reach those mountains and crash into them. So I had to, at this point, increase my throttle, and even then, I was a little bit low compared to what the glide slope wanted me to be.
Okay, here we are. Now make a right turn 90 degrees onto the base leg. Flight 300 degrees.
Yeah, basically, if you keep descending, then you're not going to make it to the runway. That's basically the fact. That's the gist of it. Needed to level off at that altitude. I was descending a little bit too quickly. Maybe in the Piper, that's what the descent rate is. But that's definitely not something you can maintain if it's taking that long to get to the
Add
runway.
1 more notch of flaps and slow to 70. Now watch the runway. Try to time your turn to roll out onto the runway center line.
Another thing that they didn't mention, if you notice those lights on the right, that's the PAPI that tells you whether you're high or low. If you see more red than white, then you are low. More white than red, you are high. And to top that off, if it's even, then you're on the glide slope. So I'm just a little bit below the glide slope, but good enough. So
Keep this turn shallow since we're flying slow.
I did not do that. Turn was, I guess it was a little shallow. But still. Now the biggest problem that he did is that he didn't mention to add another notch of flaps right here. At this point, you should add your final notch of flaps and descend. So at this point, you're going way too fast. So that's exactly what I did, add the notch of flaps.
Done properly, you should roll out right on the center line at just the right altitude to continue a stable approach.
Still not mentioning flaps. So that's when I had the last notch of flaps, alright. Would have been better if it was done earlier, but I'm currently on a good
You think you've
glide
got the
slope.
runway made? Add the last notch of flaps.
I had the runway made a
Slow to
long time
65
ago.
knots on short final. Here we are. Hold the throttle control back to idle and keep the nose up until the mains touch down.
So basically, those are my complaints. It's a little bit unfortunate if you ask me, but I hope that they fix that. I hope that it becomes
Cherokee
more in
90
detail,
Hotel,
and I
exit
hope
next
that
taxiway.
they, well, fix it. I hate
Exit the
repeating
runway
myself,
right
but that's the
here.
biggest thing. They left out some pretty important things. One that would actually make you fail the mission, and one that would actually get you to crash. So, this is my biggest complaint so far of
Okay,
flight
go ahead and
school.
stop here.
That and the lack of planes, but I'll eventually get over that. Anyway, that's it for today, so like and favorite this video and
Very nice.
subscribe.
You can do that on your own.